Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas.
Oh, that's why you got fat, to look like Santa Claus.
Rude. Anyway, we're going to be talking about Necrovision today.
Ew, leave those dead bodies alone.
That's Necro. You know what? It doesn't matter. It's a video game. We're talking about a video game. I don't know. Where does your mind even go?
Oh, I'm the weird one. You're the one who's talking about cuddling with a corpse at night, you weirdo.
You know, it's a mystery to me why Master Chief just didn't let the first ring go off with you at his side.
Why don't you just get to the point, Captain Cellulose?
I hate you. Legitimately hate you. But unlike Cortana, I actually don't hate this game. I find it kind of interesting. This weird World War I zombie vampire whatever Wolverine game, I guess. It's an odd duck. It is very odd duck. The funny thing is this was developed by a studio known as Farm 51. Now, if you don't know who that is, think back to the 360 when you decided to play the Painkiller remake. Yes, because of the success of this game and the intrigue that was brought upon by this entry, this old Necrovision world, the Painkiller guys were like, hey, you want to remake our game? And they went and did it. Now, I played that in the past. I think it's pretty alright. And I was like, you know, I'm going to give their original IP a chance. I'm going to fucking get my penis deep into it and see how it feels. See if there's any teeth, any edges. I really want to know what's going on with this. And I have to say, the beginning actually had me a little bit intrigued when this British guy is sitting here talking to you and you're deep into the trenches. Because there's always been something a little bit eerie about the First World War. It's the fact that you're looking across the land of corpses over to the other side where they're trenched in, getting trench foot, and you're sitting in a trench with trench foot, and rats are running by you. Ugh, I hate rats. If I could just purge one species off this planet, it would be rats and mice. Not a fan. That's not the only problem. I mean, the idea that if you jump out of your trench and go to make a run for it, they got machine gun nests everywhere that are just gonna mow you down. And you're not even safe in your trenches because they're launching mortars constantly all day and all night. It's raining down around you. At the same time, they're also throwing gas into these trenches, so at any moment you could be like overwhelmed with gas and then die from exposure to that gas. It was an absolute nightmare situation, especially when compared to its superior sequel, World War II. You look at the fact that there's these big moments like D-Day or when they push into Germany. You have all these moments that make for great cinema and great looking back on it, but World War I was just depressing, sad, dirty, wet, and disgusting. It was just this miserable, grimy, horrific experience. And that's not to say that World War II didn't have a lot of horrific things happen. I mean, we all know it did. Tons of terrible stuff. Mr. Mustache Man was not very friendly to a certain group of people. But you look at what the regular soldier was going through in World War I and how long it lasted and the amount of times where you're just sitting there waiting to basically die. It's terrifying. It is where horror comes from. That type of suspense to wait for death. And at any moment, things could change abruptly. Yeah, you got that in World War II, but not to the same extent. It's like when you go to a museum and you see like pictures from World War I, you get these heebie-jeebies. Not when you see like World War II pictures where you're like, yeah, we kicked some ass. World War I was sad. It's just like this weird, grimy experience in history that kind of gets overlooked. And so I did really love the idea that we were going to jump into the trenches and maybe get a little bit of that same type of feeling. And the opening of this game really kind of feeds into that thought that you're like, oh, this is underutilized potential here. This is greatness. I can't wait to feel the vibes, the creepiness of what they're going to put me through. And it kind of has this COD aesthetic, where even though COD can feel very fast-paced, it also is much slower than your normal Painkiller, Serious Sam, Boomershooter, whatever you want to call the more fast-paced shooting style games. COD is a much more slow, direct approach to that same design. So this idea that we get to finally expose ourselves to these trenches and the horrors of World War I, it was an exciting premise to me. And this beginning of the game was really selling me on that idea. I mean, even leading into this opening weird cutscene, that's also the cutscene that plays in the idle menu bullshit. Weird choice. Usually the idle menu cutscene is completely different than the first in-game cutscene, but this game was like, nah, fuck it, we're just gonna do the same thing. And this is really the only high CG bullshit cutscene you get in the entire game. It's a weird thing, and then it just shows you clips from shit you're going to later do in the campaign. I thought it was a weird choice. I don't know why they did this. It kind of pull me out a little bit. I don't need to see what I'm about to do. But don't you fret, this isn't the first or last time this game will hit you with a bunch of weird bullshit that makes absolutely no sense in creative design choices. But let's get to that a little bit later. We wake up after that whole intro that's kind of pushing us into this World War I vibe, really entering the clitoris of awesome World War I shit, where you really don't even get to actually do much, but it does set a precedent, and it has an atmosphere, and it's all cool. You then wake up with this one douchebag talking to you. Basically, he's gonna go AWOL. He's had enough of World War I. He hates this shit. It's grimy. It's gross. I don't blame him, but I wouldn't say go AWOL is the right choice. And you're sitting there like, yeah, dude, I don't think I fuck with you that much. And this guy doesn't like that, so he decides the best course of action is to murder you. Yep, he's gonna kill you. And so you wake up and you then bust his ass to death. You fucking kill him, and now you're stuck in a room and you get your first weapon. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Where's my cool machine gun? Why am I getting a single shot rifle? Well, this is World War I, you dumbass. They didn't have machine guns. Well, I mean, they did. They had their little machine gun nests. And there was a few portable machine gun style weapons, but they weren't like widely available. So if we were sitting here and thinking, now this is a World War I game, this is what World War I was about, yeah, that would be perfect. You'd be like sitting there with your long, hard, wood-stocked rifle, with either your trusty 1911 American-made pistol or your Luger from the Germans. Germans. Actually, the Luger's not a bad gun. As well as down the line, getting your old trench gun, which, fun fact about this game, they did the trench gun so wrong. They did it so dirty. The great thing about the trench gun and what made it so fantastic is Americans showed up with their little Remington shotguns, and they found out that if you held the trigger and pumped, you could fire off as many shells as fast as you can pump. And us guys know how to pump a shotgun really fast because it's just like stroking our own tube juice sticks. You know, the ones that we've been fiddling around with since puberty. So there's a reason why we know how to make a stroking motion incredibly fast. So the moment that these Americans jumped into a German trench and just started slam firing rounds into their bussies, they kind of got a little annoyed, and they went to the Geneva Convention and like, das Americans pumping shells into us. This is a war crime. They are winning war. It is not fair. And we were like, fuck you, dude. You're throwing gas into our asses every single night, and you expect us not to jump in there with American ingenuity and badass slam fire? Shut up. But that's the real World War I shotgun. In this game, the World War I shotgun is just your typical run-of-the-mill single-pump fire shotgun. Lame, cringe. It's almost like they thought, oh, well, we'll just throw the shotgun in there because it's iconic. We'll throw it in there because it's World War I, and we're not going to do much more research after that. They're like, it's a shotgun. You pump it once, it fires. They didn't understand why the shotgun was so effective, and that's a little bit, hurts. It hurts a little bit deep inside. It puts you in a little bit of a pain zone. And that's not to say that the aesthetic doesn't make up for a lot of the bad weapon design. I mean, even when you're firing a machine gun, the particle effects are blinding you, the shaky cam is annoying, and there's just a lot of weird choices when it comes to weapon design and how they function. But it does make up with it with aesthetic. I mean, just look at this little turret section I have here. It is cool. I'm shooting down planes. It's very, very World War I. And then you go to like gas tunnels where people are coming out dying and other people are shooting them as they come out. It's brutal. It's real. It's the fucking shit, bruh. But what atmosphere cannot make up for is the gameplay itself. Now, the weapons are hit or miss, but they still feel decent. They still feel like they're supposed to fire that way. Even though ADS always feels like it's off and the hitboxes are weird, it's still the guns have enough bang behind them where you feel like you're just kind of punching somebody in the anus. But what doesn't work, and what I was kind of highlighting with the Call of Duty mention earlier, is the fact that this game never takes itself and like calms itself down in the early areas. In fact, it starts off with, oh, here's a bunch of people, maybe you want to run in and punch them. That's what you want to do, run in and punch them. You don't ever want to stay behind cover, that's stupid. Run in and punch them and you will get through them actually faster than trying to shoot them with your stupid ADSing, because the hitbox is being wonky. Because this game is secretly trying to be a Serious Sam painkiller-like. But the game doesn't quite want to play its hand yet, so it's trying to deceive you. It's trying to get into your little earworm and mind's eye and say, hey, you little pussy, we're playing a World War I horror game. And you're like, okay, I'm vibing with it. It just kind of feels like a bad version of COD. I'm not fully locked in yet. I don't know what you're doing, what your plan is, and then it hits you with a giant vampire god in the sky, and you're like, I guess we're not in Trenchfoot land anymore, Toto. Because this giant vampire god in the sky decides to exposition dump on your ass. He basically tells you about this German official named Zimmerman. And I don't know why this is, but I feel like Zimmerman is like the Mr. Smith of Germany. Everybody's got the last name of Zimmerman. It's like, you look at a phone book, it's like 175 Zimmermans and one German name, you know what I mean? But basically, Zimmerman's been a naughty boy. Yes, he has. And he's decided to obtain more power than God itself, and they want him stopped. He's a traitor now. He wants to be God instead of helping the vampire god. You're like, so far out of the realm of World War I at this point that you have no idea what's going on. Not to mention, from this point on, they start adding in goddamn zombies. That's right, no more soldiers. Well, I mean, there is still soldiers. Even when the soldiers are fighting the zombies, they will, like, bail out on killing zombies just to try to shoot your ass. I don't know why they think that, oh, well, zombies are killing us. Well, American, kill the American. He's got a weird southern accent. Because I haven't quite gotten to how the main character sounds, but everything he says sounds like he's trying to be George W. Bush, which is quite off-putting when you're playing this game. It doesn't really have the vibe of your southern boy charm. It just kind of sounds like he's saying stuff. He'll be fighting, he's like, I'm gonna send you back to hell for taking down those two towers, Osama bin Laden.
It fooled me, we can't get fooled again.
But from this moment on is where shit kind of hits the fan, not just in terms of story, but in gameplay as well. I mean, the story honestly starts kind of making sense, and you understand what you're doing here, but in terms of gameplay, it starts giving you different weapons, and they all feel weird, especially the machine guns you can carry. I don't know why they added in so much particle effects and shaky cam, but if you try to shoot the machine gun balls to the walls, all that happens is your entire screen shakes you to fucking death. It's like you're having an epileptic seizure every time you fire a gun. Also, the single-shot rifle is going to become the bane of your existence because you're constantly going to have ammo for this son of a bitch, but it doesn't fire fast enough to really stop the hordes of zombies coming your direction or the giant guys with machine guns. You'll try to hunker down to use the rifle and its iron sights, and you just kind of get blasted in the anus from 87,000 zombies rushing your way. So your main guns you're going to want to use is the machine gun and shotgun, but you're going to run out of ammo pretty constantly with them and have to go back to that rifle. I don't even think the most annoying part is using the single shot rifle. Yeah, it puts you at a disadvantage, it's kind of tough, it annoys you at times, but the real annoying part is the fact that when you do get ammo for the machine gun, you fire it for like 2 seconds and it sprays so many bullets into the atmosphere because you can't see what you're aiming that you're back to using the only trusty weapon, your 1911 or your shotgun. It's quite annoying, to be honest with you. Now there is one silver lining, I guess, if you want to call it a silver lining. If you beat the game, you get New Game Plus, which gives you the vampire gauntlet that you get halfway through the game. And I have to say that this game almost feels like it was made for that vampire gauntlet from the point that you see that vampire face on. Everything with the vampire gauntlet is fun and fluid. You've seen me using it throughout my gameplay that you've seen on screen. You've probably been wondering why I haven't brought it up. It's because I'm not supposed to have it, because I beat the game and went and got more footage from my New Game Plus playthrough, which I have to say was a much more enjoyable experience. The fact that I can run through just slashing through their faces like Wolverine, it feels like the game was made for this, especially when you get into some of the boss fights. Because you're going to fight this same boss like 4 times in the first half of the game. I don't know, 5 times, a bunch. You fight him a bunch. And every boss fight breaks down in the exact same manner, except for the first one. Because for some reason, the first boss fight's like, yeah, just kill all the zombies and monsters will throw at you and we'll kill the boss for you. Every other one, you have to kill all the enemies and deal damage to the boss at the same time, which means that you're going to be utilizing a lot of your powerful ammo on the boss and then running around like a chicken with your head cut off with your stupid rifle trying to pick off the single zombies before getting swarmed and dying. That is is the constant rinse and repeat of almost every single boss fight from this moment forward. It is quite annoying. Unless you have the gauntlet that you get halfway through the game and you can use on New Game Plus. Then it becomes fun as shit. I don't know why, but this gauntlet is one of the best weapons put in games. I love this thing. It is fun. It's like a Wolverine claw that shoots fireballs and projectiles and chains. It's got like 4 different fire functions when you get later in the game, and they're all fucking amazing. They're all super fun to use. And that's honestly how most melee features are in this game. Melee is like a center point of this game. It's kind of like Shadow Warrior 2013, I think, where the sword is one of the best weapons in the game. It's kind of that way with the shovels and the bayonets and your rifle butt. You feel like you do more damage by running up to an enemy and just beating the absolute shit out of him compared to actually shooting him, which makes this a weird dichotomy of, instead of sitting back and shooting like normally would in an FPS game, you're running up and just beating the shit out of everyone because it's quicker than actually shooting them. But when you come across your second encounter with the same floating light guy in the sky, you find out that this game was almost built around this gauntlet, only you didn't have the gauntlet in your first playthrough. Because when you're getting flooded with the zombies in the second half of the game are the way to recharge your gauntlet so that you can fire off those projectiles that you want to. And when you're doing these boss fights in the early game, you're noticing that if you can like use those zombies to fill up your stupid shut the fuck up button, you can then fire that shut the fuck up button at the boss and then go back to farming enemies, and it becomes this really fun boss fight that the first go round was annoying as shit. I don't understand why they didn't give you the gauntlet at the beginning of the game. I know that there's story reasons for it, but in terms of gameplay, having the gauntlet makes this such a fun, fluid experience that I don't understand why the devs didn't do that. Maybe in their first development, they were like, oh, it'd be so cool to run around with the gauntlet, and then they redesigned it because they're like, oh, we don't have a story reason why he'd have the gauntlet when Zimmerman has the gauntlet, and you have to beat Zimmerman to get it, obviously. So then they had to scrap giving you the gauntlet from the beginning of the game, only to put that as New Game Plus, how it was originally designed. That's how it feels to me. You can let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but I'm sitting here with elongated areolas telling you how I feel, so if you don't like that, I'm sorry. I think another reason that it builds up annoyance from this moment onward is, again, you fight this same boss fight like 3 or 4 more times. It's so annoying. You fight him once, and you're like, oh cool, I was in an arena, people were flooding at me, I beat them down, shot the boss fight, end the thing. Who's the next guy? Oh, well, you never fully defeat him. He disappears. He runs away. So then you have to fight him again and again and again. And it makes this whole first section annoying as shit because you're fighting the same boss fight over and over and over. It's the same problem I had with Halo 5. And that's a lot of complaining, I know. You're probably thinking I hated this game, and you couldn't be more wrong. And when I was seeing the cool dragons fly in from the skybox, getting hit by planes and then blowing shit up, that's awesome, dude. I want to know what that dragon's all about. I want to go play cards with him, have a brewski. But I then go and fight like giant orcs, and that's cool as shit too. It's starting to put in these enemies that I'm excited to see. This enemy design that I've been dying for the past like 2 hours while slogging through this cumfest of a game. I'm finally getting the stuff that I want, because this enemy design and these monsters, and even the one monster boss fight you do have after this, is the stuff that pushes you forward into the gameplay experience. This is the stuff that's going to keep you going, because this is where the game shines the best, is when it's trying to be the Serious Sam Painkiller game, when it's trying to show you the scary monsters and the hell beasts. That's where it's cool, because it feels like the game was designed around that feature, only the game doesn't know how to push you into that zone with the weapons you have from World War I, so it just doesn't. It just leaves it on the wayside and says, we'll fucking get to it later. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Who cares? And the game doesn't get like insanely fun until you start up a mech and start blasting people through the fucking atmosphere. Once you get into this mech, it makes a turning point in this game where I think the game becomes what it originally wanted to be from the very start, that the devs really didn't know how to build. So they later put in the weird fucking World War I weapons and all the other bullshit, which is makes up for the whole first half of the campaign. All this weird shit that you deal with and all the problems you have aren't really as noticeable from this mech point onward in the game, because because this is a well-designed mech section. This is fun, it's fluid, you're killing things, you feel like you're God. It is cool. I mean, you do take damage, and when you do get damaged, your mech explodes, and then you're stuck on your feet, which there's nothing worse in this section with the weapons you currently have than being stuck on foot dealing with all these enemies, especially when you get to the final boss fight against Zimmerman. Yes, we have found the guy trying to be God himself. It is time to end this once and for all. At least that's what it feels like, because again, this game feels like two different games shoved together and then released. Right here is where it feels like the end of the game. This feels like your big moment. No longer are you dealing with floating blue orb guy in the sky. No, you were fighting a giant scorpion that Zimmerman's controlling. That is sick. It's got this weird almost steampunk aesthetic, but not quite. It's like gothic steampunk scorpion. Awesome. As the fight progresses, you deal damage to the scorpion, and then you run around destroying these things that recharge it, and you do that on repeat, but you have to make sure that you keep a fluid pace, otherwise he will destroy your mech and you're stuck on foot, and there is no way you're beating this on foot. It'll let you try, but come on now.
Come on now, it's not happening.
Yeah, but it's this fun, fluid boss fight that makes you think and keeps you on your toes, and this is the type of stuff I wanted throughout the whole campaign. Even the boss fight against the monster that you saw a snippet of that I kind of just ran over was kind of a shitty boss fight, because if you decide to use a machine gun on some of the orcs that you fight before that boss fight, you're fucked in that boss fight, because the only weapon that does any damage, it feels like, is the machine gun to that monster because of how quick he is. So you have to like replay whole sections to make sure that you can have enough ammo to fight that boss fight. This boss fight feels like it was geared perfectly. It doesn't feel like you were fucking just thrown into a boss that you are automatically gonna lose unless you did everything right without knowing what you needed later on. This boss fight was perfectly geared. It feels fun. It feels fluid. This is the type of stuff I live for. And after you beat the scorpion, you then get a second phase. That's right. A boss fight in this game with a second phase. That's insane. I was so mind blown at this portion getting this second phase because of the fact that I fought the same blue orb guy 57,000 times to where my beard growed another 6 inches that my penis should have gotten. But come on, man. I'm so small. Please give me more length. Anyway, so this boss fight kind of breaks down in a very funny way because he's floating around the sky. He can fly. He's got the gauntlet, which you've seen me utilizing up until this point, so he can shoot fireballs like crazy. It is weird after you get the gauntlet that you have to charge it up, and Zimmerman can just use that shit like an automatic rocket launcher, but it is kind of fun moving around and trying to pick him off from the sky. It never feels like he's so overpowered that it's impossible. If you keep moving and keep dodging his projectiles, you can work him down to nothing. And even when I played this in the first playthrough without a gauntlet, where I couldn't run up and just stab him, it did feel like it was meant for this type of slower weaponry. It's almost like they're like, okay, we made it originally and it was too fast, so what are we going to do? What are we going to do to face this? So they slowed him down a little bit, gave you a chance to really get out of his way and keep up with him. I really like the way this was built. It was a perfect opposite type style fight from the one where you're fighting the scorpion. It really was a cool crescendo into you then getting the gauntlet, which for some reason contains the soul of an old vampire warrior who will kind of guide you through the second half of this game. Also, it's kind of funny from this point on, no more George Bush voice. No, you were talking straight up like Serious Sam, because that's obviously how gloves work. When you put them on, your voice gets deeper and changes 100% differently. I mean, it happens to me all the time. I put on a golf glove to go golfing, and I'm all of a sudden like, I hope I get par on this course. Now, you might be wondering, yeah, well, okay, so your voice changed. What else changes in the second half of this game? Well, everything. It's a completely different feeling game. Your whole point, nothing has to do with World War I anymore. That's gone. Who cares about that? We don't see a trench for the rest of this game. No, we are in steampunk gothic vampire land from now on, fighting like demon vampire monsters as we make our way into hell to eventually fight Mephisto. Why? I don't know. It just was like, yeah, the glove's like, yeah, the Mephisto's trying to be better or bad, and we vampires need to stop it. And you're like, okay, sure, whatever. And the glove is a vampire glove, so it like blood charges it. That's what the explanation for why every time you hit somebody with it and cut them open, it then can use its projectiles is because blood. Yep. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Another thing that's kind of weird is it just decides to give you a whole new selection of weapons. Gone are the days of using World War I weapons because who cares about World War I anymore? We are in gothic steampunk vampire land, and those guns are stupid. Here's a vampire SMG, which is not only the vampire demon killing machine, but it also kills my frame rate at an ungodly level. Every time I fire this thing, I'm pretty sure my PC feels like it's gonna explode. Now, I know I'm sitting over here with like a 9060 or 960, I mean. It's not like the most powerful PC, but I can still play most games without any issues, and if I have some issues, I just turn the game to low. Not this game. I turn the game to low, still have the frame rate issues every time I fire the machine gun, which sucks because for a long time, this is your main go-to weapon in the vampire world. This is the only weapon you constantly pick up ammo for, so the fact that it destroys my frame rate with every single shot is just insane. Terrible optimization, especially for an older game. I play these old games all the time, and I have never had this much issues with one certain style of gun, and it's the same issues I had before with the older machine guns where it was too much particle effects, too much shaky cam. I'm sure that it was dropping the frame rate during those moments too, but it just wasn't as bad as this. This gun just nukes the frame rate into the absolute ground, turning this game into one of those people that wants a girl to step on them with heels. Performance issues aside though, this game really does step up its nonsense from here on out, and you have a lot more fun because you're kicking some serious ass. Almost everything that you had problems with before, you can now deal with in a really quick fashion because you have a Super Wolverine glove on your left hand, you have a vampire SMG in your right, and you just kind of take everybody to the cleaners and beat their ass. Like the naughty, naughty vampire demons they are. Ooh, I'm gonna step on you. I'm gonna step on you, vampire demons, just like you step on my frame rate. Ah! And I'm sure you're sitting here kind of curious why I'm having so much fun when it should be very disjointed from the first half of the game, and I should be like, where's my zombie Germans? What's going on? Well, the zombie Germans are still there because that's how you collect health and, not really health, that's how you collect your power-ups for your gauntlet glove, getting that blood. And it's kind of funny that you have so many zombie soldiers and you really only see one live soldier for the rest of the entire experience. I don't know if they're just pulling the dead bodies from the upper ground from the war to help them experience these vampire hell chasms, or if there's just a giant Kremlin orgy going on right underneath the entire war that we were fighting in the Western Front. No one knows because it's absolutely nonsensical. I have no idea why they decided to go with this whole absolute coin flip, other than maybe the fact that the developers were playing Painkiller and they thought, you know, I can make that game, and they were in the middle of this World War I game, so why not just turn it into a Painkiller game? Those gripes aside, I honestly feel like this is the much better gameplay experience than the first half. It feels like a much tighter experience, even with the technical issues that this game will bring to your forefront and constantly dredge your frame rate down to semen levels. It still has a pretty fluid gameplay style that is much better than the first half of the game, where it wants to be fast-paced, but it can't because it's limited to World War I guns. The game also has completely scrapped away all of the original guns. It is done with those. It does not care about those anymore. It says, fuck you, sniper rifle, fuck you, rocket launcher, fuck you, weird trench shotgun that isn't a trench shotgun. All of those are scrapped. Now you got the vampire SMG, which we talked about, the vampire shotgun, which is kind of mid. I miss the trench gun, honestly, the non-functioning trench gun, because the shotgun in this one doesn't quite work really well. But then you get a flamethrower, which absolutely kicks ass. It's a good flamethrower. Like I've always said, flamethrowers are a coin flip. They either suck absolute balls, deep-throating them deep down, or they're absolutely amazing. There is no in-between. There is not a mid flamethrower. It is just garbage or good. You also get a grenade launcher that is a grenade launcher. It functions as a grenade launcher. But about partway through actually starting this hell descent, you then jump on a dragon and you spend a good portion of the last bits of hell, or not last bits, but a long time on this goddamn dragon. This is a Dragon Quest game from here on out. You are flying around, blowing shit out of the sky with fire breath, and then fire bombs from the same... I don't understand how the dragon can just like... and then just hawk to a giant fireball at its other enemies' anuses. I don't understand how that works, but it does it. When you get enough power and you kill enough enemies, you then get a hawk to a power and just blast it into the goddamn Skibbity Riz, Ohio, right into their butts. And to be honest, this fire-breathing dragon section is the highlight of the entire game. When I got on this dragon, the mech didn't matter, any other cool shit that I had done didn't matter. This is what was cool. Getting on a dragon, hopping off the dragon, and then going fighting enemies and getting back on a dragon. It is really a fun thing because at this point in the game, you finally have enough arsenal to really have fun with the enemies being thrown at you. You really use the shotgun that isn't terrible. It's kind of like the Halo Infinite shotgun, shotgun if it was slower. That's really the only comparison I can have. It looks really cool, don't get me wrong. It's like a spiked dildo for some reason, which is awesome, because who doesn't want their dildo spiked for a little bit of anal bleeding fun? And on top of that, you also have the fact that it has mag-fed and not single shot operated, so you don't have to sit there and reload forever. Then let's get to the grenade launcher. Like I said, it is a grenade launcher. It does a basic grenade launcher things. It doesn't have like a hard arc drop, so it's kind of an in-between between a grenade launcher and rocket launcher, and it's pretty good. It does what it's supposed to do. It wasn't overly well designed, I mean, it's not bad design. It's still cool looking, but it's not like the most memorable grenade launcher of all time, especially when compared to the spiked dildo shotgun. That's just sick. And then you got like the machine gun with the threaded back. It's all cool stuff. All of these other guns look like they were made by vampires and dragons and cool dark fantasy grinds. And then the grenade launcher just kind of looks like a space gun with a steampunk skin attached to it. It wasn't really my jam, but it worked really good, so I was constantly jumping back and utilizing it. And don't worry, they don't really kick you off of the dragon that many times. I think it's 2 in total through this whole giant section of flying through these caverns, killing giant flying demons. And you know, it really works because once you get a little bit bored of being on the dragon, it throws you on foot, lets you kill some shit, and then throws you back on the dragon. You can't complain. The dragon combat's really fun. It was one of the better controlling vehicles I have messed with in an FPS game, which was super surprising to me, considering the fact that this game drops the frame rate when you shoot any single gun whatsoever, and the particle effects just drive you nuts because it shakes the whole screen and drops the frame rate, like I said, down to sludge semen levels. But then you get on the dragon and everything works perfectly. Same thing with the flamethrower. The flamethrower, even though it has a ton of particle effects, it doesn't overcloud the screen, and it still works the way it's intended to without compromising the actual gameplay experience. I mean, what else can you ask for? It's a wonderful, well-performing dragon section in an FPS game. I have not done this before. I mean, Doom the Dark Ages is coming out eventually, and it will have a dragon combat section too, and I can only hope that it's as fun as this one, to be honest with you. This is a really, really fun section. I had fun destroying all the different stuff, fighting on the different environments. The only time the dragon isn't fun, to be honest with you, is during the first half of the Hell boss fight. The weird Hell General fight. So during this first half, you have 2 boss fights during this section, much like when you fought Zimmerman, but this time you're put in a really cramped arena while you're flying on a dragon, having to do tight turns, and it takes all the fun that you had previously with the kind of open caverns. I mean, yes, they're very linear, but they're still open in the same regard, and you have all this fun that you can be had, but then you're shoved in this really tight room where the only real way of doing damage is by shooting the Hawk 2 at it, and then flying back up into the ceiling and just flying in circles, killing the enemies until you recharge, and then doing it again. It is a constant battle of attrition, which is the worst aspects of the early game bosses. Now, I said when I did the New Game Plus for the early game bosses that they then became fun because it was like I could charge up the gauntlet and use the gauntlet's power to actually deal with the boss the way it almost feels like it was meant to be dealt with. Well, this part, you really don't have anything that's a better advantage or a better direction. It's just a goddamn battle of attrition, and it shows the real problems with a lot of the boss fights in this game is because it's just, hey, shoot thing until it dies, and then wait until your powers recharge up, and then shoot things until it dies, and the boss does a ton of damage, so you better not get hit or you will die. It is an annoying, bad FPS boss fight design, and it's really highlighted in this section, which sucks considering everything up to this point was way better than the first half of the game in terms of gameplay. I was having way more fun. The game had flipped the script. I'm flying dragons, I'm shooting people with vampire shotguns, and I'm like burning monsters to a crisp. It feels like a cool Painkiller-like game that I can have a lot of fun with, and then it just has worse boss fights than the Painkiller boss fights, which, if my memory is correct, I gotta replay them to really get the mind, but I don't remember Painkiller's bosses being that great, but I feel like they were still better than these were. Because I don't remember getting annoyingly dizzy in a Painkiller boss fight, but not to say that this was like the most dysfunctioning, dizzying boss fight I've ever done, because I've definitely played worse, but it's up there for kind of a dizzy gameplay experience. Just flying around in circles, and the controls that were really tight and fun now start to feel like they have problems, even though they really don't. It's just this arena was not made for this type of boss fight. I don't know, it was just a little off to me, and it sucks because the boss is really well designed. He's sitting on a giant monster, he's got like a sword, but you don't really get to see that cool shit because you're fighting him from a distance the entire time. And then you get like a cool cutscene of him stabbing his own monster. Like, that's cool shit, but you don't really get to see him with the sword and the cool stuff because you're in the sky the whole time. Just a weird design choice, and it goes along with a giant list of bad design choices throughout this entire experience that have kind of added up. Not, again, that this game isn't bad. I've played some really bad games like Bloodhound, which even Bloodhound, I felt like the bosses were still a little bit more fun than this. Even though Bloodhound is a fucking clusterfuck of a painkiller-like game, this game just doesn't feel like it knows what it wanted to do. It's almost like when they were making the development meeting, they were sitting there like, World War I game, World War I game, no, hell, World War I game, hell. And then they made the game and they're like, oh shit, we have all this stuff, we don't have boss fights, let's just put them in there. What makes a boss fight fun? Give it a lot of life and make it a bullet sponge. And somebody in the corner was like, I don't like that idea. And so they took him out in the backyard and shot him to death. And don't get me wrong, the second phase of this boss fight is a lot more fun, you got a lot more things going on, and this is the type of stuff I live for. I was wanting this in the first phase of the boss fight, but I just got dizzying mess, and you can finish the second phase in like half the time that it takes you to do the first half. The first half is so goddamn time consuming. I played it on both normal and easy, and both times it took me around the same amount of time to actually defeat this son of a bitch. But after this, you finally make your way down to Mephisto. It is time to fight the big bad of this game, the guy that's got the swinging meat, or he's coming after you, he's gonna take your women, he's gonna come in here and take our jobs, he wants to take over the world, so you gotta stop him, and it's awful. It's really not fun. It's so long. This is the longest boss fight you will ever face in your life. You get a mech, but the mech, instead of just having like auto rockets like the mechs did in the past, now you have this little orb that comes out of your left side. You're just Orbeez. If we're at a baseball game, Orbeez. I know that's Dippin' Dots, but Orbeez are those little water bullshits. Anyways, it's just throwing water pellets at him until eventually you break him down to do a next phase, and then the next phase, because there's 3 phases to this boss fight. It is a goddamn battle of attrition. Worse than any other battle of attrition I think I've ever faced in a game. It just keeps going and going and going. I don't know who designed this. It looks cool. He looks like a badass demon, but you just run around in circles, and then when you run out of ammo, you gotta shoot the fucking 3 birds out of the sky to get enough power-ups to shoot more Orbeez at this son of a bitch. It's just you're making goddamn balloons of water and tossing them at him. It's like, oh, you're a demon. You're hot and on fire. I'm gonna put you out with water. I really just wanted my rockets back from the mech earlier in the game, and it sucks because this is a cooler looking mech. He functions a lot better, but not when it comes to his alt fire. His regular machine guns, exactly the same as the mech before. His other weapon, no, we gotta charge it up now because we added in this charge function that the first half of the game didn't have, because you have the gauntlet now and everything has to function like the gauntlet, because these are 2 different games that have been sandwiched together. That is the entire experience of Necrovision, is 2 wildly different games shoved together and then like sewn in with duct tape and hopes and dreams and Gorilla Glue to make it seem like a fully fledged out realistic game, but it doesn't. It feels like you're playing 2 different games slammed together and you're trying to figure out how it all makes sense. This isn't always bad. Like I've said, I've given this game some credit. I think the weapons in the second half of the game, much better, much more fun. I think that the mech in the first half of the game, way better, so the second half takes an L there, and the first half gets a W. That's really the only W the first half gets, to be honest. You fight the same boss like 472 times. It sucks. But it's just weird how this game doesn't have an idea of what it wants to be. I just don't, I want to be in the mind of the developers and see where they were coming from here. I feel like there was just one dude sitting in a chair, and they came in and they're like, do you have an idea for a game? He's like, World War I. And they're like, what's the idea next? And he takes his shirt off, starts rubbing his own nipples, and he's like, we go to hell. We send the guy to hell. And instead of being a southern boy with a George W. Bush accent, no. He's going to be Serious Sam. And he's just rubbing calluses into his nipples. It's just like an overusage of stimulation went into this game. It's just so stimulating to this one guy's ideas. And if they would have worked on maybe making things function a little better, where it didn't just absolutely brick the PC, because though my graphics card's only like a 9050, 9060, that still came out in like 2015. This game came out in 2009. It shouldn't be this terribly unoptimized. And it might just be because of it's how old it is, and some games when they get a little old, they don't function as well. I have no idea. I'm new to PC gaming. I just know that this game has tons of problems when it comes comes to frame rate, has tons of problems when it comes to design, but at the end of the day, there's still fun to be had in it, especially if you just throw some cheats on and just blast through some Germans. The first half of the game becomes this just absolute power fantasy, especially if you play it with the bullshit on. Another cool thing this game did is, depending on which ending or which difficulty you get 3 different endings there. Now I got 2 of them. I got where the normal difficulty, where when you beat the Mephisto himself, you then become the king of, or the leader of Hell's army. You're basically Spawn now, which is cool and based. Or if you do it on easy, you then beat him and it transports you back to World War I at the end of the war, where somebody like points a gun at you and is like, "Hey jabroni, you best get up or I'm gonna kill you." And then somebody runs up, "The war's over," and he's like, "Oh, cool deal, dude," and they like high five and like go into a tent and make out and have like lots of intercourse and then go back to their wives or whatever. I don't know what they did in World War I wasn't alive back then. Leave me alone. Also, Europeans are weirdly touchy with each other. I don't get it. But then if you beat the game on hard, you become Mephisto himself. You become the king of hell and you rage your own attack on humans and vampires, because you get peace if you do it in the normal difficulty. You're like, I get 100 years of peace and then I become General Spawn guy. But no, if you beat this game on hard, everyone basically dies because you become king of hell himself and you get the bad ending. It's weird that the hard difficulty is actually the bad ending of this game, where everybody dies. It's like the regular ending, you just kind of win and then you wake up and life's going back to normal. But then you go to normal, you're like, oh, I have to become the leader of Hell's army because I want everybody to have 100 years of peace. And then you go to the last ending and it's just like, you kill everybody. Who cares? You are the bad guy now. A weird choice. I don't know. It's kind of weird that if you go through this game and play through all the aids of what I imagine the first half of this game is in World War I, in hardest difficulty, and then you just get into the second half, which is over the top painkiller nonsense, to these giant boss fights that have way too much health. You get through all of that to find out that you're the asshole the whole time, and then you've caused hell to havoc all of Earth. That is just a weird way to end a game. That sucks. I'm glad I never played this game on the hardest difficulty. Not that I would be the guy that'd play that anyway. I would just like end up throwing my PC into the yard and then peeing on it. That's not for me. I don't have that amount of skill level. But yeah, that was Necrovision. It's an interesting game to say the least. Should you buy it? Yeah, dude. If it's on sale, usually it's on sale for like $1. What's a fucking dollar, dude? It's so cheap. That's basically nothing. You can literally get this game on it. I see this game probably on sale on Steam and GOG every single week. I don't know if this game ever goes back to its original price. It's just constantly this developers are like, please buy this game, enjoy it. We're basically giving it to you for free. So why wouldn't you play it? Why wouldn't you have a little bit of fun killing the hordes of hell? At least it's worth $1 just to fly the dragon, to be honest. That part was so much fun. I love that section of this game. I like having this game just for the dragon section. That's $1 worth in itself. So a lot of people are going to play this, complain about everything. I'm a type of glass half full kind of guy. I like when I have a full load in my nutsack that I can present to a vagina somewhere. No, I can't, because I don't want to have more kids right now. Not quite ready for that. But I do see that this game has some potential, has some fun, and it's worth $1, guys. Come on. But that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you at least enjoyed yourself. Was sat in the background, slowly stroking, having a grand old time. I love you all, and I'll catch you on the next one.